Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
What was old is worth putting back on the stove and dishing out again.
We just reached 1 million meals donated to those in need.
She made you feel like she was in the kitchen with you.
Today on Spotlight, GiftAMeal reaches a major milestone as they expand into 25 states across the U.S. Plus, why research says the fall leaves might look less brilliant this year. And then, from its Native American and later French colonial roots, we'll take you inside a culinary history of Missouri. But first, meet St. Louisan Irma Rombauer, who wrote The Joy of Cooking in 1931. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
Finding a recipe these days is fast and easy. Just hop online and search. But the authors of the 9th edition of Joy of Cooking will tell you their recipes are tried and true.
Just think of it as a very heavily curated and fact-checked internet.
John Becker should know he's the great-grandson of Irma Rombauer, the St. Louis woman who authored and self-published the first edition in 1931. Nearly 60 years later, in 2019, Becker and his wife Megan Scott published the latest edition, adding 600 new recipes after several years of testing.
It was the first cookbook that I ever bought for myself, but I picked it up because I knew it had a reputation for having everything that you would need to know as a cook.
Joy of Cooking has raised a nation of home cooks, over 20 million of us. But when the cookbook made its debut, it was at a time in American history when finding joy was as scarce as finding a job. In the early 1930s, Americans were in the throes of the Great Depression. With no work, people lined up outside soup kitchens, and families struggled to put food on the table. In 1931, at 52 years of age, St. Louis socialite Irma Rombauer was no different. She found herself with no income and little savings after her husband Edgar, a prominent attorney, took his own life the year before. Biographer Ann Mendelsohn writes in Standing Facing the Stove that Rombauer was strong-willed, intelligent, forthright, and artistic. Born to German immigrants in 1877, Rombauer spent most of her life in St. Louis, aside from a few years overseas when her father, Dr. Maximilian von Starkloff, served as a diplomat. Their home still stands at Compton and Longfellow. Mendelsohn also writes that Rombauer was known for being an engaging hostess and was president of the Wednesday Club, a St. Louis social club for women who wanted to gain knowledge and take part in civic projects. Inspired by a successful cookbook published to support a St. Louis children's home, and at the urging of her two grown children, Marion and Edgar, Rombauer went to work writing her own version, despite her lack of cooking experience.
Irma grew up with household servants and she had a cook. And so when she found herself in reduced circumstances after her husband's death, I think a lot of it was due to she was kind of approaching the kitchen anew and learning a lot of new things for herself as well.
She gathered recipes from church friends, pals at the Wednesday Club, and her family, testing them all and adding witty comments on not only how to prepare the food, but how to serve it.
This is something great to have like on hand, in case, your neighbor stops by. So it's a lot of that sort of, that you can definitely see that hostess and kind of entertaining background.
The result was The Joy of Cooking, a compilation of reliable recipes with a casual culinary chat.
It's the family miracle, for real.
Yes.
That's pretty much how we feel about it.
Her daughter Marion illustrated the cover, a simple drawing of St. Martha, the patron saint of cooking who wielded a mop to fight off the dragon Tarrasque. 5 years after her first edition, Rombauer found a publisher, Bob's Merrill. Together, they introduced Joy of Cooking to the world.
Yeah, that's a really remarkable thing to me, is that she kind of embarked on this career in her midlife. And she had no prior experience as a writer, and she seemed to embrace it with a sense of humor. And I think that's what came across in that early edition especially, and what really endeared her to so many readers, is that she really was just a personable individual, and she made you feel like she was in the kitchen with you.
Bonjour, my friends. This is Irma Rombauer.
But one of Rombauer's biggest fans was Julia Child.
The first edition of The Joy of Cooking took me a year to write.
Their relationship was briefly depicted in the Nora Ephron movie Julie and Julia, of which the family is not a fan.
Let's just say that there was something lost in that treatment of Irma. For instance, I don't think that Irma would have been so forthcoming with her husband's suicide.
From Irma to her daughter Marion, to her son Ethan Becker, and from Ethan to his son John and wife Megan, there's been a new edition roughly every decade.
We don't want Joy to just become a museum piece. We don't want it to be irrelevant. We want it to continue to be a helpful cookbook for home cooks. So we tried very much to stay in that spirit when we were revising it.
The 1943 edition gave space for wartime rationing. In 1951, new appliances like blenders and freezers came into the picture and into the book.
So this one is the 1975 edition. So this is the one that sold over 6 million copies, so the most popular one.
Magdalene Link is a researcher at the Missouri Historical Library. She says since so few copies were printed in 1931, that first edition is tough to find.
Is it rare to find signed copies of The Joy of Cooking by Irma Rombauer?
We do have 2 first editions. So one first edition has the original dust jacket on it, and that one is signed by Irma Rombauer, and it's dedicated to Maisie, and Maisie was her husband's secretary. And Maisie helped her with kind of writing early editions of the book and kind of developing some of those early recipes. We also have a first edition that's signed by her daughter Marion, who did the illustrations, and she was the head of, I believe, the art department at John Burroughs School at the time.
Irma Rombauer died in St. Louis in 1962. Her tomb at Bellefontaine Cemetery is often visited by fans. She is memorialized with a star along St. Louis's Walk of Fame in the Del Mar Loop, which Becker and Scott visited in 2011.
Irma is such an illustrious presence, and I think she deserves the star, absolutely. And it was really cool to see. But yeah, it is humbling to think that we're responsible for her legacy in some ways. We take that to heart.
Becker and Scott are already making plans for Joy's 100th anniversary edition in 2031. For now, follow along in their kitchen on Instagram at The Official Joy of Cooking.
Sliced bread was offered for sale for the first time ever in Chillicothe, Missouri in 1928 by the Chillicothe Baking Company. The bakery did not invent the machine, but was the first to sell bread that was sliced by the machine. The event was pretty much lost to history until 2001 when a journalist discovered an old newspaper headline in the Chillicothe Constitution Tribune stating, "Sliced bread is made here." The state of Missouri now honors Sliced Bread Day every July 7th. A celebration, you might say, was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
GiftAMeal is a free mobile app, and each time someone snaps a photo of their food or drink from a partner restaurant, we donate to a local food bank to give a meal to someone in need. I mean, we just reached 1 million meals donated to those in need throughout the United States, and so now we're in over 25 states and are expanding rapidly across hundreds of restaurants. Each time a customer is at one of our partner restaurants or orders takeout or delivery, all they need to do is snap a photo of their food or drink, and we donate to a local food bank to give a meal to someone in need. This is all funded by the restaurants as a mix of marketing and giving back. And on the impact side of things, our donations are helping to fund the distribution of healthy groceries from these food banks to hundreds of neighborhood pantries where those in need can access it. So one photo taken on GiftAMeal is 1 meal donated, all for free for the customer. And then the guest is invited to share their photo on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And for each platform they share on, we give another meal.
We've always been all out about giving back to the community. It's been, it's like the most important thing to us. We feel so lucky that we've been so successful, and we just love sharing our success with everybody else.
So we have hundreds of partner restaurants, and you can find out which restaurants on GiftAMeal by, a table tent at the restaurant. Sugar Fire has a nice poster up or some stickers on the table, and then all you need to do is scan the QR code to open the app and snap a photo, and there you go.
We coordinate with GiftAMeal, and we have been since the inception of GiftAMeal in 2015. GiftAMeal has benefited Operation Food Search in the St. Louis region by donating more than $100,000. You know, food insecurity can be very high around the holidays. There's kids are in school, but they're home over breaks, and a lot of times families have a challenge with feeding their kids. If they get the meals at school, they're having to come up with the meals on their own over Thanksgiving break, over winter break. There also tends to be a decrease in food being donated in some regards, and so it's a challenging time.
Right when the pandemic hit, we saw food insecurity go way up, so there's a big need there, and then obviously restaurants shut down. And so we saw that there were these two major challenges for both the groups that we work with, and so we tried to pivot as much as possible to help both groups. So for the hunger relief side of things, we did a matching donation campaign with our users where we would match up to $5,000 in donations, and within 10 days we raised over $20,000 for Operation Food Search. On the restaurant side, we pivoted from photos taken of dine-in food to takeout and delivery and gift cards and things like that, and just tried to promote our current restaurants as much as possible.
St. Louis is full of wonderful dining opportunities, and it's really, eating a meal, eating with family, with friends is an opportunity to connect, and GiftAMeal really does a great job of connecting Operation Food Search with the restaurant community, with people in need.
Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. The splendor of autumn leaves, brilliant colors to be admired before their glorious descent. With a little wind, golden showers, leaf death is certain, with the crunching beneath our feet. Some may catch the significance of fall leaves. The Danforth campus of Washington University in St. Louis is an accredited arboretum with a diverse collection of more than 5,000 trees.
So all the trees in the Northern Hemisphere, such as the trees here on campus, have evolved for thousands of years.
Honorary Professor of Biology, Suzanne Renner, studies trees. Renner is especially fond of this native Chinese tree.
So here we see one of the ginkgo trees. It is so beautiful. And you see here, 20,000 leaves, and they rain down simultaneously, all at the same time. We can predict when they will fall because the tree forms a special abscission zone, a layer that is a place where it will break off, a break-off place, a morphological area of cells 6 days before dropping the leaves. So they're all just hanging there in a little bit of wind, and then they all fall down.
The changes that occur in autumn are in preparation for winter. It's about survival.
And they do this by getting rid of their leaves, which would be impossible to maintain. The leaves evaporate water, and you can't draw up water from frozen soil. So the leaves would constantly lose water, and the tree would die of drought.
Renner's love for trees and all their benefits led to years of research about climate change.
The general thinking is that with the nice warm conditions, the trees could well hang on to their leaves a little longer.
But Renner and her colleagues discovered that's not true. The timing has nothing to do with fall temperatures.
Because the signal that the trees use to prepare for winter is not the temperature, it's the day length. Once the days are becoming shorter, all you want to do is get rid of those leaves because winter is coming.
As one of the lead investigators, Renner and her team proved a warmer fall does not mean leaves change colors later. A spring frost would cause leaves to change colors later in the fall, as the age of the leaves is important.
You damage them by a frost, experimental frost. So they have to make new leaves. These new leaves, they stay on longer. They stay longer and they photosynthesize more. The moment when leaves are shed doesn't depend on the temperature. They were all experiencing the same temperature. It depends on how much photosynthesis, energy gain, the tree has done in the spring. If it couldn't do any because the leaves were damaged by us, it had to hold on to its leaves longer.
However, warmer fall months from climate change may still do one thing.
Experiments have shown that the red color in particular, this anthocyanide, the concentration is influenced by temperature and light. So if we have bright light and night frost, we have a higher concentration of the red anthocyanide. So if there is no night frost, we will have less brilliant, less deposition of the red color.
But Renner says not to worry about drastic changes.
In the northern hemisphere is not going to change drastically with climate change. The main signal is the shortening of the days. That won't change with climate change.
It's a reassurance embraced by all who love fall.
The story behind restaurant DD Mau, later on Spotlight.
A dash of nostalgia combined with a pinch of curiosity is just a part of the recipe two veteran food writers cook up between the pages of their new book.
You want to taste the past, you want to taste the history, you want to be able to then take that food and transport you from the past to the present.
Historian and culinary writer Suzanne Corbett and food and travel writer Deborah Reinhardt dish out recipes and interesting nuggets from Missouri's past about the food that made history.
I think that the different ethnic groups that came to make Missouri home layers our food history kind of like a cake.
Whether it's food or beverages, readers will find what's old is new again, taking us back over 200 years.
We were the breadbasket of the New World.
Learn how to make acorn financiers or pawpaw pudding, and find out how Springville, Missouri became the birthplace of cashew chicken.
So every city's got its own food story, and many are very adept at telling that to visitors.
It goes back almost 200 years in your book. Was it tough to find these recipes that you share?
The recipes are what we really wanted to drive the book because that's what I think people really are most interested in. And that's what set this book apart from other culinary histories about Missouri. For me, it wasn't hard because I wrote basically the last 100 years. And so some of these recipes were shared with me either through chefs, current chefs, or they were on company sites. And then some of the really older recipes or receipts, I guess as they would have been called back then, Suzanne modified for today's cook.
Right. Because what would be different from today versus then? Would it be the type of flour we use? Just the ingredients that were available?
Ingredients are different because just of the way things were raised. Eggs are smaller, cream was richer, milk was richer. So if you have a background in culinary history and if you're working as an interpreter at historic sites, which I have, you're able to take a vintage recipe and update it for modern use, and also for the sensibilities of the palate, because not everybody would be aimed for, would be game for like buffalo tongue or things like that.
Going back in history, for folks traveling to the Wild West, really Missouri would have been their last stop before civilized cooking, right, Suzanne? Would that have been one of the
jumping off spot, yeah, the last place you could get a decent civilized meal with a knife and fork and maybe a china plate.
Share the story with us regarding some of the beverages that had an interesting path.
Well, St. Louis and Missouri in general had a large soda influence, and Vest soda became popular here, was produced here. 7-Up was invented here. Billion bubbling beverages, all that kind of stuff that was all very, very popular here, and it still is. I mean, there is a throwback now to those original old brands, or to recreate those brands, to reestablish them. And people are discovering those old flavors, and that's making them new again, which I think is a fun thing, particularly with some of the newer recipes that chefs are doing. They're discovering what was old is something that's worth putting back on the stove and dishing out again.
To find out why the average American person used to eat 3 pounds of bread a day, watch the full interview at hecmedia.org.
They are the best-selling authors and all of your favorite genres. For in-depth, one-on-one interviews, go to hecmedia.org.
St. Louis is known for toasted ravioli, gooey butter cake, and Provel cheese, but there is one holiday favorite that few know was invented here. Ready Whip. St. Louisan Aaron Bunny Lappin started injecting real whipped cream into lined spray cans in the 1940s. His invention created ease and extended shelf life for the post-war society. By 1951, annual sales had topped $7 million. The company he created to make aerosol valves, Clayton Corp, is still in business and now based in Fenton.
Driving down this quiet street of well-manicured homes in Webster Groves, one house stands out. At first glimpse, it looks just like an overgrown yard. But look closer, and you'll see it's actually part of a growing trend called foodscaping.
Foodscaping is the practice, very similar to landscaping, of utilizing food-producing plants instead of the traditional landscaping plants that we're used to seeing, whereas we might see things like boxwoods and hydrangeas. Foodscaping would replace those things with things like the pie cherry or the blueberry.
And if you plan it right, you can enjoy fresh fruits and vegetables all year long.
There's definitely foods that in the grocery store or even a farmer's market, there's still some degree of separation from you and your food and where your food was grown. That even small degree of separation makes a difference in the flavor. Yeah, sure, you can go buy a tomato in January in St. Louis, but it's not going to taste like my tomatoes fresh off the vine in July. I garden in all 4 seasons. This behind you here is something called a cold frame. So right now I have cherry tomatoes and Roma tomatoes planted here. But this weekend I also put some leaf lettuce in. And what I'll do is I'll put a cover over this winter, and because it's got that nice south-facing sun, I'll be able to grow lettuce all throughout the winter, and we'll have fresh salads all throughout the winter.
As a physician, Rebecca says that in addition to the taste, there are also definite health benefits of eating foods you grow yourself.
There are plants that I grow that are purely medicinal. So chamomile is one example. I grow that. I harvest the flowers, dehydrate them, and we use them in teas. You're always better off eating a tomato than you are eating a candy bar. But probably there is some degradation in the nutrients. And I think you also have to take into consideration the health benefits of emissions and how long it takes to get there. Is this coming from a place that pesticides aren't super regulated, that sort of thing. So I think there's that value.
And she says those health benefits go well beyond just physical.
The mental health benefits of this garden, I think, are the biggest benefits that I get from it. So I always say that my favorite way to come in from work is to park my car, come into the garden, harvest a few things, get my hands a little dirty, and then go inside. Even just having that walk through the garden and that sense of peace and saying, oh, that's almost ready for harvesting, or oh wow, that bloomed, or oh my gosh, look at all the pollinators here. That is such a rewarding feeling, knowing that I planted this and I helped it grow.
Part of foodscaping is also trying to change the culture around grass and its effects on the environment.
We really are stressing to people that if your grass lawn isn't serving you to, picnic on or to play, games on, then converting that lawn into something that provides food and medicine and habitat for both you and all of the insect, bird, and butterfly life around us, that would be a way better option than something that has, no benefit on the environment or to us.
And as the Chibnall family found out, not having a grass-covered front lawn has one more benefit.
And I think people would be surprised at how nice it is to not mow a lawn. My husband at this point is the one who mows the grass. I do all the gardening, he mows the grass. And he's really excited for us to have absolutely no grass in the front yard very soon. We always say you can't eat the grass. So we want to have everything in the front yard be edible.
HEC Media. recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. Mid-America Emmys, Tellys, Natoas, Auroras, and other awards. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Hundreds of nominations and wins, from regional to international levels. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries. Individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Plus so much more. And although doing good work is its own reward, recognition, well, it's nice too. See what all the fuss is about. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Hi, my name is Julie Truong. I am the owner of DD Mau Vietnamese Eatery. When I started to open my own restaurant, I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn from my mom, because she was the one that always cooked for us. Gathering all her recipes and her techniques, and then as I opened it, I was like, oh, I found my own technique of the way of cooking and just kind of changing the taste to my liking. DD Mau means on the go to go quickly in Vietnamese. Growing up, my parents, they owned a chop suey in Baden and a little convenience store. We all just kind of went into the industry because, coming from Vietnam, they were like, okay, what could we do? The passion of cooking led on to the kids because this is how our families get together. This is what we enjoy. We enjoyed cooking and hosting people and spreading the food to our loved ones. We traditionally would always eat Vietnamese food. Vietnamese food was one thing that, a bowl of pho or a bowl of bông bò huế was something, that we would always get on the weekends. We'll have all of American Thanksgiving food, and then we'll have our Vietnamese things, Vietnamese food, and then some Chinese food, and a little bit of everything. We have it at our banquet, my aunt's banquet hall in Michigan. It's like a Chinese wedding. You have rounds and rounds and rounds of tables. Spending that time bonding with everyone and just catching up. And it's important, so important to be with family because that's all you have.
Next week, creating equitable representation of Black women in STEM. Plus, a coming-of-age novel of a young man who flees a burning and divided United States for Ireland. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.